Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Get Control of Project Documentation with Susan Medeiros from Cumberland Farms and Scott Ackerman from New Jersey DOT. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Maggie Caesar. I'm the Senior Customer Marketing Manager here at eBuilder, and I'm joined by my colleague Matt Sprague, who is the Product Marketing Manager here at eBuilder. Before we get started, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. We welcome your questions today. Please type your questions into the GoToWebinar control panel as they come to you throughout the webinar, and we will answer them at the end. And if you have any technical difficulties, shoot me an email. I'll try to help you out. However, we will be recording today's session and sending that out to everyone over the next couple of days. Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to you, Matt.
Thank you very much, Maggie. As Maggie said, my name is Matt Sprague. I'm a Product Marketing Manager at eBuilder. And so you're not here to listen to me, although I've got a couple things that I have to say, but we'll jump right into it. So today's webinar is looking at top owners and getting control of project management. And just to reiterate, we have two guests with us today. We have Susan Medeiros from Cumberland Farms and Scott Ackerman from the New Jersey Department of Transportation. And they're both going to have an opportunity to kind of highlight some of their experiences with eBuilder and project documentation. And as well, I wanted to kind of just highlight a few things that I found interesting lately. So Dodge Data and Analytics did a report comparing top performing owners with the lower performing owners. And it was interesting to me to see that at least the top performing owners compared, at least 25% of their projects were completed ahead of schedule. 50% of those projects were completed under budget. In comparison to the lower performing, as expected, you would have lesser statistics there to show that, that there is room for improvement. So now I bring this comparison up because we have two of our top performing owners with us today in Cumberland Farms and New Jersey Department of Transportation. And one of the other key findings in this research from Dodge Data was that the biggest difference between the high performing and low performing really was technology. And if you look at the graph on the right hand side, basically of all of those polled, 43% of the lighter ones are essentially the percentage of the lower performing owners' answers, and the dark blue or the royal blue would be the higher performing. And so that they really cite being innovative with technology, standardizing on processes, project performance is frequently measured, and the use of a project information management system rather. So I bring that up just to kind of set the stage for two organizations that really do a good job at looking at project efficiencies. And as promised, I would not talk a lot, so I'm going to move on. This webinar today, as I mentioned, we have Cumberland Farms and New Jersey Department of Transportation. And first up, with the Cumberland Farms, we have Susan Medeiros, who is the Manager of Capital Projects. And she is going to be speaking regarding naming conventions and version control. And I will hand over keyboard control over to Susan right now.
Thanks, Matt. Good afternoon, everyone. As Matt said, my name is Susan Medeiros, and I want to elaborate on my title there. It's not just Manager of Capital Projects. They can't fit my whole title on here, so it's Manager of Capital Projects, Budgeting, Compliance, and Administration. A lot of words for a lot of responsibility, and eBuilder is one of my prime responsibilities. I work for Cumberland Farms, which is headquartered in Westborough, Massachusetts, hence the New England accent. And of course, I have to mention this again, I'm a huge Patriots fan, go Pat, Super Bowl, all the way. Anyway, I digress. Before I begin my section on document management, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the team at eBuilder for inviting me to speak with you today. It is truly an honor, and I'd especially like to thank Maggie, Matt, and Danielle, and my co-host, Scott. All right. Sorry, let me get my mouse working here. Bear with me. There we go. Okay, first a little background on me and Cumberland Farms. In 1939, Basilius and Aphrodite Hasiotis started it all in Cumberland, Rhode Island with nothing but a cow and a dream. The company is currently led by CEO Ari Hasiotis, their grandson. This family-owned business operates in 8 states in the Northeast and Florida markets. For the last several years, our capital improvement projects have numbered close to 40 each year for ground-up builds. In addition to that, there are many smaller scale projects such as remodels, tank replacements, and dispenser upgrades. The capital construction projects, including entitlement and land costs, account for nearly 85% of the company's capital budget yearly. I have been working for Cumberland Farms for 16 years now. In that time, I've seen so much progress from our prototype designs to our company culture to moving into the future with technology to assist us. I led a small team in the search, design, and implementation of eBuilder back in 2012. Our real estate group consists of real estate, planning, construction, environmental, and facilities support. My team primarily supports the planning and construction teams, which is about 20 people. That means that they support those 20 along with every level of management across departments in the company, our outside consultants and vendors, towns, utility companies, etc. Every day brings its own challenges, and there's certainly never a dull moment. So, let's get down to it. What's in the name? Today I'd like to talk about some naming conventions and about version control and how they can play a major part in your document management success story. In the beginning, a journey into PMIS, and for those of you who don't know what that stands for, it's Project Management Information System. Like probably most people on the call, pre-eBuilder, Cumberland Farms had a major need to centralize our documents. We had plans stored on OneDrive, photos on another, correspondence in yet another area, contracts someplace else still, some paper, some electronic, you get the picture. One thing we did in the early phases of onboarding with eBuilder was to consider who internally would be viewing and uploading files. It was important for us to have a representative from each group be part of the design session to make sure we met their needs. It was also useful to get their feedback for non-Cumberland users' need for access. This helped tremendously when we set up permissions. But I have to tell you, we didn't listen to our eBuilder guy when we were designing everything, and we were very detailed with our roles and permissions, which is now a bit cumbersome to maintain. So the key here is when you're going through that type of a thing, listen to the experts. Listen to your eBuilder guy or gal. Although our folder structures were on different drives, we were lucky in that we were fairly complete already and just needed some tweaking. I strongly encourage you to keep it simple where you can. Rolling it out, knowing your why. Know your why. What does this mean? When people know their why, they're being asked to do something a new way rather than being told to do something a new way. It is not only received better, but it makes them part of the solution. They become more engaged with the process, and sometimes you may find that your biggest critic early on becomes your biggest advocate eventually. I have several individuals in our organization who were like this. You can find and access files 1,000 times easier. These are quotes from them. You can access the system remotely at any time, anywhere you have internet available. You can view and send large files that cannot be emailed. When I asked one of my former critics what the turning point for him was, he said version control. He told me that when he would previously look for civil engineering documents on the network drive, he wasn't sure which was the most current copy. Construction had the wrong plan, fingers were being pointed, and nobody was being held accountable. With the introduction of eBuilder, and once he could finally see the benefit, the blame game all but disappeared. It eliminated confusion, added transparency and accountability, and created a better collaborative environment. For our group, it quickly became part of daily life. We were diligent about redirecting when engineers would still email files into us. There was definitely a learning curve, but for us it was fairly quick overall. The key was to keep reiterating the what and why, and to not accept exceptions, but give them the resources needed, training manuals, videos, contacts, etc. So where are we now? What do we do well, and where do we need to improve? Naming files. The area in our document structure that I believe is the best is our plan section. We were lucky that we did have a naming convention in place for these documents prior to eBuilder, so with just a few minor tweaks, that transition was pretty seamless. And as you can see here, we just simply named all of our architectural documents, start with an A, civil design is C, and so forth and so on. And then each one of these 1.1, 1.1a, they all stand for something. So the secretary or administrative assistant to the director to the project manager, they all know that a CFG 4.0 is the site plan. And it's standard across every project, and that has really helped us a lot. Version control. You leave out version control and everyone starts losing their minds. The benefits of version control are huge for our users. When done correctly, it creates a great history of updates, the history of who posted, when, and what changed. If you decide to go back to an earlier version, it is quick and easy to do. It's also very easy to show management a change overlay of any selected versions of the plan, which can be very helpful. And if you don't know how to do that, I'm sure that your contact at eBuilder can certainly help you through that, or we can go through it during the questions. Okay, next up. Oh, not sure why that didn't switch. Let me try that one more time. Okay, where we need to improve. I wish I could say that we are great in at all this, in all areas of our workflow, but unfortunately we are not. Over the years, I've seen many areas where we can improve, and we have some things already in place to try and improve those items. I have some people tell me that they do not need to name files the same thing. They want dates at the end of the proposal name so that they know which one is the most current. They are missing the point. And it's my job through my team to get them to that understanding. So why? I've seen the pitfalls of this time and again where my team pull what they believe to be the current proposal for a vendor when setting up their commitment, only to find out later on that there was something more recent. We need to search for ways to improve in areas like this. The more you know. Never settle. Looking toward the future. And just so you know, a little side note, never settle is one of our goals here at Cumberland Farms, one of our core values. I love change. Change is my favorite. Say very few people ever, but honestly, I am one of them. I don't love change for the sake of change, but rather to further the efficiency and productivity of my team, my department, and my company. As I mentioned, oops, sorry, too far. Nat, can you put that back one for me? I think I went too far. There we go, right there. Thank you. As I mentioned on the previous slides, we have some work to do to make things even better for ourselves and for our users when it comes to our document structure. A very recent enhancement we made was a solution to a problem we were having in a change order process. The GCs were posting their documents to the process, which were automatically saved to the correct folder. But they didn't have access to the folder because other vendors' contracts were also housed in the same area. Short of adding specific folders on every job, which would be a nightmare, we were not sure how to handle it. I mentioned this to eBuilder when they came out to train a new admin on the system for me, and we were able to find a solution. Simply by not giving them permission to the parent folder, but giving them permission to the dependent folder, allowed them to view the files when in the workflow, but they could not get to it in the document structure, which is exactly what we were looking for. We plan to revamp our financial folders so that similar setups can be done for invoicing and other sensitive data that's used in workflows. Offer users the why for successful use of the system and resources so that they fully utilize the capabilities. Wrapping it up. As I wrap up, I want to thank you for your time and for being a gracious audience. Please remember to know your why. It will serve you well. Thank you all very much for being attentive listeners.
Thank you very much, Susan. So coming up next, actually, before I do that, I just want to remind everybody that if you have any questions for either Susan or Scott, feel free to enter them into the question fields as we progress, and then we will take questions and do a Q&A at the end. But please don't feel that you need to wait until the end. You can submit your questions as we go through this. So moving forward, our next guest, our next presenter is Scott Ackerman, business analyst at the New Jersey Department of Transportation. And I will hand it over to Scott as he goes into looking at the biggest differences between, the decision-making process to move towards becoming paperless.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. My name is Scott Ackerman, and I work over here at the New Jersey Department of Transportation, or NJDOT. Again, thank you to all of you for coming in today, and again, thank you to Maggie, Matt, and Susan for everything that we've worked on with getting to here. Just a little bit about New Jersey Department of Transportation before we dive into things. New Jersey DOT was actually the first state transportation agency established back in 1966. Before that, you had dealt with a lot of state highway departments, but the transportation agencies took on a new meaning with bringing in things like light rail and New Jersey Transit and overseeing some airports and ferries. So it really became the first one of its kind. Currently, we oversee about 2,300 miles of public roads. That includes interstate highways, private toll roads that we have cooperations with. In addition to that, there are grants that are issued for townships and county transportation enhancements for design and construction. In New Jersey alone, there's at least 6 million licensed drivers. Now, that's not taking into account everyone that happens to use our roads, such as coming to the Jersey Shore or tractor-trailer traffic that moves between the bridges and portways. It's a lot of use on our roads and trying to make sure that we keep a capital program running, and taking care of the roads is a top priority for us. Now, over the next 10 years, there's about 400 of those capital projects planned. And that's not taking into account the hundreds that already exist, as well as all the local, what we call local aid or local roadway projects that we happen to sponsor grants for and help with project management with. So there's a lot that we are going to be overseeing, and we are currently oversee and dealing with project management-wise. Now, back in 2012, my division, Capital Program Support here at the DOT, started to investigate the concept of our current reporting needs, as well as the concept of electronic document management. From there, what was born was the PMRS, the Project Management Project Reporting and Management. You ever had one of those moments, folks? Hold on a second. Project Management and Reporting System, or PMRS. Now, one of the things that we were able to do was look into eBuilder about utilizing Bluebeam, utilizing eBuilder, utilizing Esri ArcGIS, management for our schedules, management for costs, as well as enhanced reporting. But what we're here today to talk about is document management. Matt, I'm running into some issue with advancing. There it goes. Okay, I think there it goes. Now the mouse is working again. Sorry about that. What we're here to talk about is actually dealing with documentation. So the first question really got asked was paper or plastic? Do we want to go and be stuck with a whole bunch of paper records about everything, or move our ways into the digital world to really start to have document management that we could really utilize to help out our business needs? The first question really had to be asked was why? Why have an electronic document management system? From there is to determine what would we need to have both as a business and functional to get this to happen. We need to determine the drawbacks of using technology was a definite need to review and assess before really diving forward. But in addition to the drawbacks, we really had to look at how would our benefits and would our benefits outweigh those drawbacks. Now, one of the first reasons to why to move to a document management system, well, here's a good part right here. That is live shots here at the DOT. Documents are kept in a wide variety of places. This includes project file cabinets, project manager file cabinets, the project coordinator's file cabinets, the subject matter experts file cabinets, all those people's different computers, network drives, thumb drives, SharePoint, ProjectSolve for our design and CAD areas, designer servers, contractor servers, FileNet, which is our state-approved record retention system. All these different areas of having documents. So if I need to find document, I'm pretty much on a wild goose chase trying to find the document I'm looking for. Who knows where it'll be and how long it's going to take. Now, one of the things we want to try to do is have better access to these type of things. There we go. Sorry. So being able to access things was a huge advantage and huge reason why we wanted to move forward. I couldn't spend all day finding a document. I wanted to have that file in my hands right away. Now, cost is a huge factor. When it comes to the cost associated with toner, office supplies, printing plan sheets on plotters, as well as the project costs around printing, working with paper absolutely comes at a huge cost versus doing things digitally. Also, when it comes to office space, it was a nice factor in there. We have one of our floors that is halfway filled with just file cabinets and paper, not spaces for more people that could be utilizing getting work done in cubicles. That's not saying that's a reason why there's hiring freeze or anything like that. It's more so of this is why we can't have more. This is why my cubicle is 2 feet by 2 feet. All right. Now, once we decided we were going to start looking at this, we had to determine what were going to be our business and functional requirements. For our business, we wanted to make sure that we could perform document reviews in a timely manner. We wanted to make sure we can access documentation readily and easily, have version control over changes of documents that might happen, be able to go and reduce the number of printed documents, be able to go and sign documents digitally were business requirements. Functionally, how we were going to do it, we wanted to make sure we could utilize markup. So doing that was something along the lines of bringing in Bluebeam, as well as utilizing Redline already within eBuilder. That was the answer to some of our solutions that we were going through. How we were going to go through digital approvals had to be addressed. So there's a lot of things which we had to determine and come out with an exact list of what did we need. From that list, we're able to go and actually scout out different vendors, and obviously by me talking to you today, eBuilder came out on top of who we're looking for of who was out in the marketplace. Now, when it comes to some of the drawbacks here, change is a major factor, but not just the type of change you're normally thinking of. We're talking about culture change. People that are used to working with paper in their hand, having that red pencil in their hand, making marks on a plan sheet, thumbing through a report, being able to understand this is the document I have and how to look at it. This is a change that needs to happen. We need to be able to move away from just having hard copy in our hands. Not saying all paper is bad, not saying we can't have copies of everything, but for our final design submissions of a project that's going to go out to construction soon, there's over 40 copies of a plan sheet that is created. These sheets are 500 pages or more, and they're 36 by 30-inch giant plan sheets. 40 of those. We're talking reams upon reams of paper that don't need to exist, all to make sure that each individual person can go and make their comments. Being able to go and move into a digital fashion is a much bigger piece. Now, in addition to that, being able to go and look at policies and procedures to those changes. We're NJDOT, we're a government, welcome to bureaucracy. You're going to have policies in place and procedures that outline certain things need to get done. How many of those things had to be done because you have to have a wet signature and retain 3 original copies versus being able to move forward to a digital signature and being able to retain it in a digital storage space. So a lot of this had to be investigated. What type of laws might be applicable? We worked with the state professional engineer licensing board to make sure that digital signature for professional engineers could exist. We're one of the last states to actually make that switch into that, which kind of also falls along with that culture change. In addition to that, being able to, that's not advancing yet. All right, come on. Sorry about that. Being able to go and look at equipment upgrades. Being able to determine, okay, we need to see what type of systems we would need, what type of software we need to acquire, what type of licenses we need to have. Do we need to go and get increases to our monitors? Because now we're going to be doing markups and plan sheet reviews on a smaller screen. There we go, now it's finally advancing. On a smaller screen versus a larger screen could be more advantageous to people. Being able to cut down on some things. Being able to get tablets for decision makers, such as our assistant commissioners and commissioners, that can go and have information at their fingertips when they're at a large-scale business decision meeting. Having Wi-Fi access to the tablets. Being able to give tablets to our inspectors out in the field who can look at the plan sheets out in the field, not have to lug around an accordion file and multiple reams of paper, but be on a computer, look at the plan sheets, take pictures at the same time, make notes and mark them up, and give in quick reports. Huge advantage, and this was looking at equipment upgrades is a necessary factor. All right, enough of the negative. Now let's start talking about the positive. What benefits do we have to an electronic document management system? Well, first off, being able to find the information, being able to have an increased access to documents is a huge, huge benefit. If I go to a public information meeting, so I'm dealing with stakeholders, John Q. Public, anyone who is looking in an area for a project that's going to be built, and they want to see plans, they want to see reports that might be done, want to see letters, and they're all accessible to the public, rather than trying to pretty much pack a car full of filing equipment and files and plans and pretty much weigh down a car doing it. I can just bring it out on a tablet or a laptop, call up those documents and have them look at them right then and there. It moves so much easier, and it's such a nicer feeling for people to be able to, okay, I want to ask questions, here's the type of documents you need to see. As I mentioned before, increasing our physical space was a huge factor. There's a lot of documents out there. We need to start cataloging these things, and the way that things are cataloged now is they're either put in a box and shipped out to central storage. So basically start thinking of end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, when you have the one guy carting the giant file box down a huge corridor of documents. And fortunately, there we go. There's the graphic right there to explain that. Sorry about the delay on these. But being able to go, and that's how we file things now. Just box up all the different documents, file them, and okay, maybe someone might need them, and hopefully they can know which box it might be in later on. The other means we have is actually called FileNet. Now, FileNet is a record retention system. Now, record retention is a huge piece of this. If I have a design document that, say, according to policy procedures, can be destroyed after 5 years, I have a report that can be destroyed after 10, plans that could be destroyed after 30 years. If I had to deal with the physical, I have to actually rent out space and have space that document can exist, and hopefully someone will remember in 30 years, okay, this doc should be destroyed now. Instead, I can do this digitally, moving things into FileNet, have a record retention schedule set up to it so that at 5 years plus 1 day, if the record retention schedule allows for it, that document can be destroyed. and that falls in line with our state statutes and legislation. So it's a huge piece of how you can control things. In addition to that, decreasing the printing costs. We went through a investigation here at DOT to see how much were we printing, and we found out that we had more printers that we were paying to be rented out than we needed to print out paper for. We were spending more money on toner than we needed to. We could reduce the amount of equipment that we had and still be effective. Now we're taking the next step to try to become more effective, make more things digital, having easier access to them, and then that can bring down more of those printing costs. Okay. Now, one of the things that we had done during implementation was we had an automated document loader created. What this did is that it took information put in by the user, selected different pieces of metadata to say, okay, this is a concept development document, and it is a report that is dealing with soil borings. Rather than, unlike in Susan's organization that utilized having a standard naming convention, we didn't want to have to worry about the naming convention. We wanted to tie that record retention system to the type of document it was. So if I had that soil boring report, it could be named supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and it still is going to retain that information on the back end saying it's a soil boring report for XYZ project. Having that be a part of things was a huge, huge asset, and it's something that we have been using pretty much every day since we launched it back in 2016. Now, another piece what we had was creating a standardized folder structure. Every single project has the same folders and the same subfolders. Rather than having everyone who could be attached to a project being able, oh, well, I think I want to have a folder for X, Y, and Z. And that person retires. The project now moves on to someone else's hands. Now that next person figure out, okay, how did this person file these documents? What structure is this in? This makes no sense to me. I file things A, B, C. It makes it a lot more streamlined by saying all documents will be filed in this folder structure. You can have some liberties you want, but it falls in line with this exact structure. It makes it easier. And right there, you're seeing on the screen, we actually created an Excel sheet of the best ways to go and file these documents. There's over 1,000 different types of documents, and we created pathways for each one. So that way, when I'm going and I'm selecting which folder and which type of document is, it can go in there rather easy. So we're trying to make it so that way it's a nice, easier thing to the end user rather than where is this document? How am I supposed to file it? Nice and smooth. With that, that pretty much hits up my time, and thank you very much for going along and dealing with me, dealing with some of these like little tech issues here, and can't even advance to the next slide. So I'll turn it back over to Matt, who will take it from there.
Thank you very much, Scott. Really appreciate both you and Susan. We'll now open it up to some Q&A. We've had a bunch of questions submitted online, so please, again, any of you that have additional questions, feel free to send them in right now, and we'll do our best to get to them. The first question that I saw here for Scott says, how does New Jersey Department of Transportation get files from eBuilder to FileNet? Are all versions of documents moved, or just the latest version?
So we're utilizing FileNet to be the end repository. eBuilder is going to be utilized for all of our working documents. So while the project is still live and hasn't been closed out, everything will be kept as eBuilder is the source of truth. Once the project goes to closeout, then we'll be going and moving to FileNet. So we haven't made that full connection yet. I believe we'll be utilizing our APIs as well as possibly App Exchange for that to happen. But we have not designed our project closeout yet. That's something that we're going to be doing in our next phase of work. As well, and that will be tying that record retention schedule. So by having the document already put in to a certain folder and having a certain document name attached to it, we've already gotten halfway there with getting the retention schedule attached, and then it's just a matter of when the project's done, just making that push into FileNet and having FileNet have a folder structure to receive that.
Great, thank you. Susan, we had a question for you, or it was more of a request. So I'm going to kind of transform it to a question or an open-ended comment, just because I know that you don't have the ability to pull up your instance of eBuilder right now. But what was submitted was, Susan, can you please show the version comparison that you spoke of? So maybe, Susan, if you could just talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So how the eBuilder document structure works, if you are doing version control correctly and uploading multiple versions of the same document with the same document name, you'll see to the right of it, it'll say version 1 if it's the first one uploaded, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. If you then want to go and compare one version to another, you select the properties for that file, and I believe the tab is called versions, and you can go in there and see the different versions and what date they were uploaded, who uploaded them, and so forth. You can then check on one or two or more of them, and you can hit a button called compare, so that it will go in and compare them. And it's very helpful with plans, especially, but I have personally also found it helpful with things like contracts. So if the GC has changed, one line on the contract, I can see it very clearly. It gives you a couple different ways to look at it: red line, overlay, and I think there's 5 different ways to look at it. So that, in a nutshell, is how you look at it.
I think another question here that kind of rolls right into that says, how does one handle requests for documents such as legal discovery proceedings when one uses eBuilder document versioning?
Can you repeat that?
Certainly. It says, how does one handle requests for documents such as legal discovery proceedings when one uses eBuilder document versioning?
So, all right, in our case, if we had some sort of litigation, if I understand the question correctly, if we had some sort of litigation going on and an outside attorney was looking for access for discovery purposes, what we have done in the past is we will give them access to that particular project and a particular set of folders, usually things like contracts, and we give them read and download permissions only. And as far as versions, they would, I believe, they can still go in and look at the different versions. But again, if we're giving them read only or read and download, that's all they could do with it. They couldn't upload anything else. They couldn't change what was already in there. So it's more of an audit type of role that we give them. Does that somewhat answer the question?
I believe so.
Okay, good. To whoever asked that question, I hope that is satisfactory. If not, let us know and we'll try and get a more direct answer.
Scott, do you want to add some color to that? Sure. One of the things that happens here is when it comes to version control, we have what's called OPRA, or Open Public Records Act. And if someone who wants to see any type of document files this request, our Inspector General would contact us and say, hey, give me all your documents about XYZ project. With the version control aspect, one of the things that could also happen is called litigation hold. So say, for example, the gas station down the street wants to go and sue us for breach of access to his project. There's litigation hold that may be put on various documents. What we can do with our version control is then not allow access to those documents except to certain users. So I would say that litigation managed to come in on, December 25th. Any documents before December 25th could then be put on that litigation hold, and view restrictions might be able to be put in place. That would be something done by our administrative team. And then everything after that date could still be the work moving forward. So that way, just because there's a hold doesn't mean work has to stop. In addition to that, what we also put in was project and user controls. The only people who can see everything inside of our system are NJDOT employees. But we happen to work with a large amount of designers and contractors. So if you're a designer, if I'm attached to XYZ project, I can see only the documents related to XYZ project. There may be another person who works in my designer office in the next cubicle over. Just because I'm on this DOT project doesn't mean that they can see it, even though we work for the same company. So we made it very specific as to who is on each project. In addition to that, anyone who is a designer or basically not part of NJDOT cannot see anything related to cost. We turned off all costability, so they can't see our financials, they can't see any contracts, they can't see anything for procurement. They have no access to those type of documents as well, which is why for us that concept of filing a document becomes so critical. We can turn off those folders for people to see rather than, oh wait, let's not have them see this document, let's let them see this document. So we put on a lot of different controls here to kind of answer that as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Susan, another question for you is, how do you intend on implementing new changes to the existing document structure?
Well, that's a good question. So as I stated in my presentation, the first thing is to discover the why. So what do we want to change and why? And I think the why is the most important piece of it. So right now, I know I have a couple of items that we want to change, one being giving our vendors access to be able to look at the invoices that they've uploaded in their invoice workflow. But right now, how our document folder structure is set up, invoices is a parent folder. So we need to change that so that the invoice folder becomes a dependent folder, and restrict the access on the parent folder and then give them access on the dependent so that they cannot see other vendors' invoices, but they can see their own when they're in the workflow. So that's an example of one thing that we're changing. Probably the bigger thing that I need to work on right now with my folks is this idea that some people have, which absolutely drives me insane, of putting the date or a V2, V3, V4 after the name of a document, and then wanting to create, I don't know how many of you have had this, but wanting to create another folder called old proposals or something similar to that. I am doing everything I can to eliminate that. We are in a place right now where I have a couple of moments, and it's not much more than moments, but a couple of moments to breathe. So I'm really hammering hard changes in efficiency, and that is one of the areas that we're going to do that. So my team will make the changes, and then we're going to send out documentation to all of our internal users on what has changed and what they need to do and why the change was made. We'll hold training sessions if anyone needs further help with that. And then we will also do the same thing if it affects our outside vendors, the architects.
And I'm back. Sorry, the audio cut out. Not sure if anybody can hear me. Are you there?
Can you hear you? Scott's here.
Scott. All right, sorry. So we still have a few more minutes. I apologize for everybody. For some reason, the phone just cut out completely. Thank you for those messaging me on the questions, letting us know that you can hear me. Couple more questions. So Scott, one for you was, how has digital signatures played a part in document review and workflow?
So right now, there's there's a couple levels of digital signature. The first one would be just to give a simple approval. So if I want to make sure that my boss likes a letter I wrote, what we did was we created one process that could act as pretty much like a document review. Here, boss, let me know what you think of this, and they would write back, okay, it's good. It doesn't really need a signature, but it's still an approval. The second piece relates as well as have our attorney generals go and look at it and sign off on it. Our commissioners and project managers sign off on it. We utilize within eBuilder and within the process, one of the processes that we developed, a two-step verification. So I'm in there as Scott Ackerman. It knows, the system knows it's me. But when it comes to my time to sign, eBuilder will automatically ask, hey, you're still you, right? Put in your password so that we can verify. And that we've been told through our attorney generals acts as though it's a two-step verification, so it acts as a legally binding type of document. Now, the third piece really gets to probably the heart of the matter, which is digital signature. So if I'm a professional engineer and I need to sign off on plans, I need to be able to have a routine of saying my digital certificate and where that's retained. Right now, we're in the process of making sure that can work by putting in a field on an individual user. So say, for example, I'm a professional engineer, and it becomes time for me to sign off on plan sheets. When that time comes, we can go and have the process double check my user profile, see my digital certificate, and then grant me the ability to add a seal or some type of stamp, which we can retain within eBuilder itself. By doing that, we retain all of the metadata that's there saying that I'm me when I signed it, because eBuilder tracks all of that, as well as having the digital certificate behind things. That's one example. We are starting to investigate more and utilize Bluebeam a little bit for some of these features as well. Bluebeam, excuse me, which has a tie into eBuilder, can go and do some of these type of stamping for digital signatures as well. It's a little bit convoluted in some areas, but other areas it's not. DocuSign does things really well. The thing with DocuSign that we've found is if we've already developed a process within eBuilder of how to route the document, why go and create another one within DocuSign to have to deal with that? And again, government agency, it goes through 3 different levels of people reviewing. So if person number 1 signs and person number 3 says something's wrong, you then have to initiate an entire new signature process. In eBuilder, that's simple, doesn't cost anything. With things like DocuSign, that can have a cost to it. So it's something that we're still assessing and still making sure is viable, and how we want to proceed with it. So it's still in development, but we've been investigating it a little too heavily.
Gotcha. Thank you. We have time for one last question, and just to those, if we didn't get to your question, we will look to get answers to your questions offline, either from our panelists or from a subject matter expert within eBuilder. But the last one is really can be opened up to either of you, where it's talking about emails. Do correspondences like emails get stored as documents in the project management system such as eBuilder?
I'm back on again. Sorry about that. I dropped off the phone before. We do include some of our emails that are pertinent to our projects, most specifically if it's authorization for a change order, perhaps. Sometimes there's email back and forth between the PM and the GC, and we want to document that. We will definitely put our emails into the document structure in the appropriate section.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have today. Again, I want to thank Susan and Scott for their time and their expertise here. Hopefully everybody found this to be extremely beneficial. If you have additional questions, feel free to email them into us or And again, if we're unable to get to any of your questions, we will make sure that we get answers to them for you offline. So thanks again, and everybody have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.